What up, squad? It's your boy K-Flow, and this is part 2 of installing a badass winch and a badass ARB bumper on your Toyota Tacoma. Let's get this thing started. This video was brought to you by K-Flow's Crib, your #1 resource for Tacoma DIY projects. Make sure you smash that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that bell too so you're up to date with my latest video releases. All the tools and materials used in this video will be on my Amazon affiliate storefront. You can find that at amazon.kflow-crib.com. For those of you who are new to my channel, the purpose of my channel is to teach you skills to fix and upgrade your Tacoma all by yourself. Now, to recap all the stuff that we've done so far, we removed the stock bumper, we removed the aluminum cross beam, and we've also installed the main bracket that holds that ARB bumper. And in this video, I do run into a few minor issues, so please take note of that when you do try to do this install by yourself. Now let's get to the truck. Here comes the more difficult part. Since I am doing a winch and bumper installation, this is going to be as heavy as your mom. In order to help me lift the assembly, I am using my transmission jack to aid in the movement and the carrying. I set a piece of plywood and then use some cardboard to cover the whole thing to protect the paint from getting scratched up. Then I deadlifted the whole thing onto that platform and then put down some jack stands in order to tilt the bumper back further so that it's more stable. I then moved the pallet out of the way and cleaned up as much of the garage as I can so that my workspace is as clutter-free as possible. Then I rotated the bumper so that I can drive in the truck. Just lift and mount the bumper onto the truck with the jack stand and stand. That was my main plan and idea going into this. Now we can take the M10 cage nuts, yes, that's what they are called in the instructions, and mount it onto the inside of the bumper as you see here. And we do that for both sides. Now we can take these M6 cage nuts and mount that onto the bottom section of the bumper like so. We can take these foam rubber bumper guards and mount them onto the front by lining up the studs with the hole on the bumper. We take our M6 flange nuts and tighten them down using a 10mm ratcheting wrench. Make sure you go around and tighten them down all together progressively and not one at a time. This ensures that the bumper guard lays flat. Now let's take some time to admire the workmanship of this complicated bumper, as well as the high quality of the powder coating. It is pretty awesome. I do hit all of the hardware with some fluid film. Now we can mount the rubber grommet at the top of this bumper. Here we use M8 bolt washer and nut to mount this winch control upper bracket using a 10mm wrench. Now we can tear open into the winch box. Here we have the Smittybilt XRC 9500 pound winch system. We make sure we stand up the winch on its side so that the control is up as you see here. We remove the screws on the one side using a 6mm hex, and that control side should just be able to lift up and off. We use a 3mm hex to remove the cover and rotate the whole thing about 70 degrees so that it can be used in the proper orientation per the instruction manual. We can reinstall the control portion of the winch and secure it in place with the 6mm hex. Now we can go back into the box and get the next box, which is the roller fairlead. Inside we see the fairlead assembly and all this other stuff inside. We get inside and remove the box, hardware, and assembly. Inside the Ziploc is the hardware, while inside the small box is the actual winch hook. We'll have to reposition the roller pins upside down on this specific fairlead because the mounting holes are upside down on the bumper. So we take a rag, cover the retaining clip, and use a screwdriver to remove it and not have the retaining clip shoot out and hit us in the face.
Wow. Never be a boxer. He has a nose for the ball. Wow.
We rotate the roller pins the other way around, and we do this for both sides, and also keeping the retaining clips off of the fairlead for now. Now we take our fairlead assembly and lift up the bumper so that we can insert the fairlead through the front. We make sure to line up the mounting holes as well. Going back to the winch, it is actually mounted using square nuts that are inserted into the housing body with a lock wash and bolt going through the bumper and mounting into the square nut. We take our winch and place it as you see here. There's really not a lot of room to place your hands underneath to line up the bolt and the mounting holes, especially with the transmission jack in the way. I ended up raising the whole bumper using the transmission jack and placing 2 more jack stands beneath that so that I can remove the jack away from the bumper. There, I was able to mount the fairlead and install the 2 mounting bolts for the bottom section of the winch. As mentioned earlier, we need to use the 2 bolts along with the lock nut. For further security, I did add some high strength red Loctite onto those bolts. Then we take our socket and tighten down those bolts to 40 foot-pounds. Next, we take the winch cable and undo it from the roller slightly so that we can feed it into the fairlead. Here's what the install looks like thus far. But then I do run into a few problems. So it looks like this bracket here doesn't really fit this control box, so I have to do a modification on this. And also, it looks like these cables are too short. If I were to mount that box there, and if I don't want to extend these cables, I'll have to rotate this clockwise so that all those terminals in the back here can reach these cables. So it looks like I'm pulling this thing out again, guys. So I'll pull it out, put it back in, we'll take it from there. Here's the motor side. Once I removed it from the winch and the bumper, I carefully removed the stator housing and inspected how the whole thing was built so I can rotate it. After closer inspection, I couldn't rotate it 90 degrees. I had to rotate it 180 degrees, which is even better. So I reinstalled the stator housing, making sure that the contact brushes were carefully pushed back as I pushed the housing back into place. Then I reinstalled the outer cover plate and installed the whole assembly back onto the winch and the winch onto the bumper. I did remove the existing control box bracket and thought up of another method for mounting that control box. I did notice that the control box came with L brackets and a bunch of random hardware, so I mounted the L brackets in a way so that the cables were coming out of the bottom of the control box. I inserted all of the cabling through the hole.
We all know what's going on here. It's just implied, but we all know what's going on in this thought bubble.
It looked really good, guys, being mounted here, and all the cabling were just long enough. So I marked out the holes with a silver Sharpie. Then I took a pin punch to those surfaces and drilled out those holes, starting with a smaller bit. Then I removed the control box and switch to a larger bit.
It just means that you're special.
At this point, we can clean out the area with alcohol and apply some brush-on paint in those exposed surfaces. Once dried, we can mount the box onto the bumper using the provided nuts and screws. Now, we can hook up the cables from the control box and onto the winch itself. It's pretty straightforward and labeled already. And I'm glad I didn't have to add any cable extensions because that would have been a pain in the dick. The cabling did come with some terminal shielding, so we insert that into the cable first.
You're one of a kind.
We remove the washer, lock wash, and nut and install the cable into the terminal. Make sure to use a wrench on the opposite side when this nut is tightened down. Now we can slide that terminal shielding over the connection. We repeat the same steps to the rest of the terminal. Last but not least, we mount the ground cable and daisy chain it with the negative cable. To keep everything neat, we can zip tie those cables against the bumper. Now, we can mount the retaining clips on the fairlead. So here's what the winch, control box, and the bumper looks like thus far.
You're one of a kind.
So that's pretty much it for part 2 of this series, guys. I do run into a few minor issues, which wasn't too bad, so just make sure you take your time, be patient, and take as many breaks as you need. So stay tuned for part 3, which I will be releasing next week. Make sure you smash that like and subscribe button. And until next time, peace out.